Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first story is titled Boss, Think About Whether You Want to Keep Working Here. Me, okay. I don't. Nearly 2 years ago I started work at company as their digital marketing person. After I started, it turned out that I was brought in to put out the fires left by my predecessor, the VP Marketing, who had a team of 4 plus himself, spent over $1 million in 1 year and brought in 5 deals, 2 of them for under $10,000. As you can well imagine, after a performance like that, I had lots of work to do, and very little to do it with. Aside from 1 or 2 paid tools, everything else was to be done using free tools only. I'm gonna do some bragging here. I beat the previous year's figures in all categories with 10% of the budget. When I started, I thought Bossman, founder, CEO, had a really good management style, saying things like, "Your successes are yours, your mistakes are mine, and the enemy of good is great." I don't expect perfection, I want you to make sure things work and get them done. In essence, I was allowed to run my own one-man department and outsourced freelancers, and as long as I was getting results, he left me alone. Since I was the only person on the marketing team, I also had to learn a large number of skills and platforms that weren't directly related to digital marketing. Not to say everything was perfect, but things were pretty good. One of the main things that weren't perfect was that Bossman had serious anger management issues. As I said before, he left me alone, but I saw him blow up it and fire other people for stupid crap. He lost it at me too once or twice, but he'd calm down after a couple of hours and things would be back to normal. If it looks like an abusive relationship, that's because looking back, that's exactly what it was. As the year came to an end, I approached Boss and initiated a performance review. I ran him through everything I had done in the past year, and he was pretty surprised at how much I had done with so little. I asked him for a raise, pointing out that I was currently making $8,000 per month in local currency, average is $4,500 per month, when people with my now augmented skill set were making between $13,000 to $14,000 per month. I asked him for $12,000. He said he'd get back to me, and never did. Every time I asked him about my raise, he had another excuse. After the last excuse, I began looking for something else. The other day we had a meeting, and it turns out that 2 months ago I made a mistake. It wasn't a critical mistake, and it was rectified within a few hours of discovering the mistake. No harm or damage was caused whatsoever to company, but Bossman flipping lost it. I mean slamming on tables, yelling for the whole office to hear, what have you. Then he said the magic words, "Pack your things up and go home. Think about whether you want to keep working here." So that's what I did, and 10 seconds later I said, "No, I don't." I started packing my crap up while he turned an even deeper shade of red and got even louder. I didn't answer him at all, just kept on packing up my things and saying goodbye to my colleagues. Turns out that being ignored really pushed his buttons, to the point where he started threatening to call security to have me removed, while I was actively removing myself and my things from the office. Here's the part where it gets beautiful. My country is very strict on employees' rights. Sorry, Americans, I feel your pain. His words and behavior are considered an improper dismissal. By law he's required to give me 30 days notice of dismissal, which he didn't. When he realized his mistake, he convened a pre-dismissal hearing, but it was already too late. He's opened himself up to a lawsuit, which I'm already talking with lawyers about. Because by law he has to give me those 30 days notice even though he already fired me. For the next 30 days I'm eligible for all the benefits and social rights in my salary, but I can do jack crap for him and there's nothing he can do to me without making the incoming lawsuit 10 times worse. I've already got 4 interviews lined up for next week, paying almost double what Boss was paying me, and best of all, I'll be interviewing for other places on his dime. The cherry on top is that because I'm the only marketing person, without me, nothing happens in the marketing department for the next month, and if he doesn't hire someone on in time, I won't be around to answer any questions the new person might have. The next story is titled, "You'd Better Rectify This Ducking Mess You've Caused." Okay, but you're not going to like the result. Bit of background. I'd been working for a kick-ass medium-sized IT company for about 4 years. I had a good track record but had moved to a department that didn't really fit my skills, and very tall director told me I wasn't needed anymore. I thought I was out of a job completely, but managing director called me in, told me that the company needed to implement ISO 9000, a quality standard that aims to formalize all those processes and roles that contribute directly, and indirectly, to the quality of the company's products. He offered me a job partnering up with an external consultant, hereafter consultant. Consultant would manage the effort, while I was to be his assistant and full-time liaison person within the company. I later learned that consultant was a personal friend of managing director. Of course I said yes. Consultant was a nice enough person, but it soon became clear that he was out of his depth with the complexities of the project. Luckily, I had a coach, my brother-in-law, who was very experienced in this area and saw the warning signs when I talked about what we were doing. Within the company, there was a lot of skepticism because of an earlier failed project titled Quality Without Limits that soon became Limits Without Quality. So this time around we needed credibility, some quick visible wins and senior management backing. However, the managing director left the company, and that kinda screwed up the senior management backing for consultant. Worse, the new CEO was the very tall director, hereafter, very tall CEO, who'd fired me earlier, and, although he knew it was important, he didn't really want any involvement in the ISO 9000 project. Fast forward a couple of months and we haven't really achieved much. My relationship with consultant is getting a bit strained as I start wondering if I might become collateral damage of his lack of skills and leadership. Consultant asks me to book a few grand's worth of training for the two of us. I had to do it by a certain date. The date passed. He asked about the training, I said I hadn't booked it, he blew up to level 5 and demanded to know why. I said I didn't think he'd secured sufficient commitment from management to spend that much and I didn't want to get stuck with an unauthorized spend. Now he's at level 10, and the crap started flying. I was a bit taller than him and he wanted to go into uber domination mode, so. Consultant, sit down. Me, I'm comfortable standing, thanks consultant, sit down me, I'll stay here consultant, sit the duck down me, shaking a bit, but outwardly calm, I'm good consultant, you need to get yourself to the ducting CEO, explain your failure to book the training and that you're the reason we're going to miss our first big deadline, and rectify this ducking mess you've caused. I really didn't know what very tall CEO would do and that there was a very good chance I'd get thrown off the project and fired. Again. But it was time to come clean. So here's how I obeyed the "rectify this ducking mess" instruction. I got a meeting same day with very tall CEO and told him that we had barely achieved anything over the several months the project had been running. I said that consultant was inept, hadn't grasped the basic concepts of the project and that with him in the project manager role it was destined for an expensive failure. I told him about the "sit down" episode. I also told very tall CEO of another person in the company, who I'd approached obliquely earlier in the week, who I reckoned would be a perfect fit for the project manager role. This was late on a Friday, and very tall CEO said, "Leave it with me," and told me not to turn up till noon on Monday. I absolutely didn't know what was going to happen and that weekend was really stressful. Monday morning I get a call from consultant, which I ignore. Nerves shredding. Now it's noon on Monday, and I'm in the building. I'm kinda bricking it. I'm outside the very tall CEO's office and he's there with the guy the first suggested should be the new project manager. Good sign. They're laughing about something. Another good sign? I walk in. Very tall CEO, "Hi. Meet your new boss." Me, thinking, crap, that went well. Excellent. What happened? Very tall CEO, "Well, I called consultant into this office this morning and we had a chat." Me, warming up, and? Very tall CEO, "I told him we needed a serious talk about the project, and invited him to sit down. He started getting agitated and declined. I asked again. He refused. I said, either you sit down or leave the building right now." Consultant sat down and I explained I wanted to make some changes. Net, he left the building with all his stuff anyway an hour later, but only after I'd told him why we didn't want him any longer. Me, empty speech bubbles coming out of my mouth. Very tall CEO, "Thought you might like the bit about him sitting down." Me, still speechless. New boss, to me, "Okay, come on. Let's have a catch up." I was on frickin' cloud 9 for a few days and new boss was an absolute star and I learned a ton from him. ISO 9000 certification followed and that project success opened up very interesting doors later. The next story is titled "Boss Sent Me on a BS Task, So I Accepted." I was working for an audio-video PC rental company with a decent-sized warehouse. We were tasked with building shelving to reorganize and build a small working space for the warehouse crew. A few co-workers, the boss, and I were all tearing things down, rebuilding, running back and forth from the hardware store to get wood. It was generally a fun day for me, where I didn't have to worry about timelines for getting things in and out the door. The boss, about 4 hours into my day, calls out, "Beard. These boards are too short, go get the stud stretcher." "Okay boss, where should I look?" "Look all over and find one. We needed to finish this." Don't come back without an answer for me. He figured I wouldn't know that wasn't real, after all I was pretty young and a lot of people thought pretty dumb. He figured it would be some light hazing. So, I rolled with it. Off I went to look for a non-existent product. First I looked at the cafe down the road, and inquired about one while I got a sandwich. I checked at the convenience store when I stopped to get some tea. I checked all around the storage cubby we were going to clean out while I made a little nest to take a nap in. I checked with myself a few times, before and after I took a short nap. All in all I wasted about 2 hours looking for something I knew wouldn't exist. Coming back to the boss he laughed, and had a grand time poking fun at me wasting time while on the clock, looking for something fake. I just, "Oh shucks boss," answered a few times. About a week later, when we went out for a drink, I told him what I did. Luckily he laughed and owned up that it was on him for sending me on the task. No harm, no foul, but hey, I got a paid lunch and a nap. The next story is titled, "Give me an option, I'll make my choice." I was in 4th year of high school, and our usual maths teacher was out. We got a sub, Mr. G, who set off my anxiety. Was a nice enough guy, but gave me the heebie-jeebies. I was a mostly well-behaved kid, but would cut his class whenever possible, gave short answers etc., so he wasn't too keen on me. I take notes down differently, shorthand, since that's how I learn. One day Mr. G sees my notes, and says I need to rewrite them. I refuse, so he scores a pen through them saying to write them again. I refuse, saying can still read them. Mr. G then gives 2 options: rewrite the notes, or get out of his class. So I pack up my stuff, stand up, and walk towards the door. "Mr. G, where are you going?" "Me, you gave me an option, so I'm leaving." He started shouting about how he didn't mean it literally, which brought the head of maths to the classroom. Mr. G tried to say I tried to leave without permission, when a few classmates backed me up with the malicious compliance. Head of maths couldn't figure out what was the problem, and let me sit in the base for the rest of the year. The next story is titled, "I got this annoying girl thrown into the cold lake after she orders me to focus only on her." Our cast. Me Sarah, nice friend Lizzie, annoying girl my dad. So, this happened a long time ago during the summer. I must admit, I was a bit of a jerk and I was unreasonable, but at the time it felt amazing. So, Sarah and Lizzie were hanging out on the lake and I felt a bit left out as they were becoming really good friends. Now, for context, their names IRL are the same. So I asked Sarah if she wanted to come tubing, but I ended up asking both of them on accident. Lizzie was pretty annoying, and constantly bragged. It was a pretty cold day for us, and they didn't feel like falling off the tube. We have a small flat tube that gets a ton of air, so it's super easy to fly off if you hit a bump outside the wake. For people who haven't tubed, you're laying on your stomach holding on to some handles and trying to stay behind the boat. Going outside the wake is pretty dangerous, if you don't want to fall off, because you don't get any protection from the wake. You have to find a constant balance between going too far forward, too far back, or overcrowding the other person. On top of that, most tubers lean, trying to stay in the wake, so you have to go from side to side as well. It's pretty hard if you've never done it before. We have some hand signals for go faster, slower, or stop. We also have some for if you want to go crazy, or for people on the boat to say if it's bumpy, which will be important in a second. Now, my dad didn't want to have angry parents after him, so he wanted these 2 girls to do perfect. It was just me and him in the boat, and the 2 of them on the tube. He says, do not take your eyes off of them." The lake was pretty crowded, and he didn't want the risk of a boat not seeing them if they fell off. Then Lizzie mocks, "Yeah whatever, you don't take your eyes off us. Our lives depend on it." I was pissed by that, but I kept my mouth shut as Sarah was really good friends with her. My dad grimaced, and just started. I did as they asked, and kept my eyes on them the whole time. My dad asked, lightheartedly, how crazy do you want me to? I said, keep it calm for now. Just make sure to go over every wake you can find. Grinning, he complied. Lizzie was pretty confident about the whole thing, thinking she could handle everything we could throw at her. Sarah knew she could handle it. She did expect me to warn her when it would be bumpy, as that's what we've done in past times. But no. I didn't look to the front once to check if it was bumpy. I just kept my eyes glued to them. Cue the malicious compliance. Suddenly, there it was. The monster waves. Wake. It was one of those that you're terrified of when you're on the tube and you need warning. I've done flips in the air flying off of these waves. In reality, it's not that big, but it's scary if you don't tube much. Luckily for me, they're already outside the wake. My dad says, big wave coming up. I just reply, oh, sorry, I'm watching them, I can't see it. Now, Sarah is a good tuber. Her dad's crazy and she's learned to get some big air before and come down well. Lizzie, on the other hand, only has ever been on a couch tube. She's got basically zero experience with getting air while trying to hold on desperately. She sees the wave seconds before it hits her. Her mouth opens in a scream, her hands grasping the handles as tight as she can, while Sarah only faces it with grim determination. And boom, it hits. She wasn't as prepared as she thought. On the way down, she loses her grip and tumbles forward. She bounces as she hits the edge of the tube and does a semi-flip before tumbling several feet away from the speeding tube. Sarah, on the other hand, manages to ride it and come down safely. Due to her arms being wonky, and her balance not right, she ends up falling soon after. But she manages to do it in a much more graceful and thought-out fashion. Only when I see Sarah fall off do I call, they're off. We need to turn around to get them. By the time we get over there, Lizzie is sputtering in shock and rage. Why didn't you warn us, op? I couldn't see it until it was too late. Now I'm cold. She shouts. To that, I just smile and say, oh, I'm sorry, I was focused on keeping my eyes on you too. She just rolls her eyes. We took her back soon after and enjoyed the rest of our day on the lake peacefully. To her credit, she was trying to do it in a funny, sarcastic way, but she came off as so rude and arrogant. Which also showed in some comments she said to me. The water wasn't even that cold, the air was just a bit chillier than it had been all day. She got what was coming for her. The next story is titled, You Want It All on the Truck? You got it. One day I was working at a box store as an order puller. My shift was almost over. My boss tells me to go load all the special order heavy gauge steel studs that came in onto the delivery truck. I go over to the side of the building and see a massive order of studs. They won't even come close to fitting on our delivery truck. I go back and try to tell him it's too much and will need to be at least 3 separate deliveries. He tells me that I don't know what I'm talking about and to just go load it. So I start to load it. By the time I was done, it was stacked 15 feet above the cab of the truck and the suspension was all the way down. I went inside and punched out for the day. As I walked past the pro desk, I said good luck getting the straps over the truck and left. The next morning the manager asked me what I was thinking. I explained what happened and he went and yelled at my boss. Then as per usual he stormed off like a child and didn't come back for 2 days. Edit. The steel studs are the kind they use to make walls in commercial buildings. They are light but there was a huge amount of them. The next story is titled, You're Right, I'm Not Actually Working. I've been having issues with a coworker who has been very passive-aggressive lately, posted about it elsewhere if you want to hit up my post history. The short of it is she spends a lot of time doing busy work, socializing, and I'm doing my best to just get work done, but she feels like I don't do anything important and I'm way too lazy. At one point we were very close, but somewhere along the line she just decided I wasn't a good coworker. I found out about 6 months after the fact that she had been thinking this. She also claims to absolutely hate staying late and having overtime. This is all just to set up the dynamic that has devolved between us. I spend as much time during the day trying to get all the little pieces done so I can leave right on time. I have a puppy at home and have zero desire to stay later than necessary. Coworker likes to talk a lot. Today she spent a good hour talking with a supervisor about all the past places they've worked and how it compares to where we are now. We were at shift changeover, and I was talking with a second shift guy and he managed to mix up his words in a very comical fashion, making the two of us burst out laughing. She looks over from where she's doing paperwork and asks what's up, and we explain around laughing. And she just kind of rolls her eyes and says, "Oh, I didn't catch that." "Yeah, no, cause I'm actually working." "Sorry." "Not really." "Sometimes I'm sorry though." "Not often." Yes, it was phrased exactly like that. I roll my eyes in return. We've got 13 minutes left until clock out and I had finished my paperwork while she had been chatting earlier. However, when clock out came, she was still chugging along. Normally I offer to help, but, you know, she's actually working. And I'm obviously not, so I'm just gonna leave. And so I tidy up my area, say my goodbyes, and leave. 'Cause I'm not actually working. When I checked my email this evening, she had been sending emails out a good half hour after clock out. The next story is titled, "You've Got to Tell Me When You Leave the Office." I work at a small accounting firm. My boss, the owner, is a CPA. We have 5 accountants, an office manager and myself, the administrative assistant, politically correct term for receptionist. My boss has absolutely hated every single bit of the pandemic. He's refused to work from home, but allowed us to work from home 4 days a week at first. Then 3 days a week. Now some of us are coming in 3 to 5 days a week and there are regularly 5 to 6 people in the office. Most recently, he guilt-tripped 2 sick employees not only into coming into the office but meeting with a client. Most of that is irrelevant, except to convey that things have been tense in the workspace lately. I dread coming into the office, not only because I worry about getting my mum sick but because my conversations consist mostly of boss man complaining about how much he hates work from home and how much we all suck at our jobs cause we aren't in the office. We've been doing the exact same amount of output, if not more, since WFH, by the way. I am a smoker. I take 3 smoke breaks in lieu of a lunch. Normally I let one of the accountants know so they can keep an ear out on the phones while I'm gone. Sometimes I'll even go so far as to forward the calls to my personal phone so no one is bothered. Yesterday, I come back from my first break and he pages my work phone saying, "You have got to tell me when you leave the office." I paged accountant and he wasn't at his desk, and then I page you and you're not at your desk. I'm sorry. What did you need? That's not important. I need to know if you are not in the office. Mind you, he doesn't ask this of my office manager or any of the accountants. Just me. And it's never because some client called and we missed it. There's never an explanation other than, "I didn't know you were gone." Today, I've gone to the bathroom 4 times and I'm on 2/3 smoke breaks so far. So, in addition to all of the client calls and appointment notifications, I have probably paged him about 14 times. Normally would be about half that. I just got the most exasperated yes I've ever heard in my life, letting him know his next appointment was here. And he has since turned on his do not disturb. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comment.